Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Eshi and I do a lot of personal finance videos and DIYs. This week we are covering a topic that is crucial to your personal finance journey. Today I am going to show you how to budget. With the interest of not completely boring you to death, I'm actually going to split this into two parts. Today we are going to cover how to track your income and expenses, and then in the next part I'm going to talk to you about building a budget and sticking to it. Before we get started, please click that like button if you are enjoying these topics that I am covering, and don't forget to subscribe if you would like to see more of this content. And don't forget to leave a comment down below on things that you want to see in the future or things that you're curious on. I would love to cover those topics for you. So you might be asking yourself, why should I budget? I pay my bills on time, I contribute to my 401k, I pay off my rent, I'm doing everything right. Budgeting is actually a great tool to use, even if you're doing everything right. It'll be especially a great tool if you're doing a couple things wrong and you want to change your habits. What budgeting truly does for you is forecast what you're going to be making, what you're going to be spending, and how much you can save over a period of time. This will help you with your short-term and long-term financial goals. If you want to buy a house in the next 2 years, budgeting will actually help you figure out how much money you need to save every month so that you have enough money for that down payment in 2 years. If you truly want to be prepared for retirement, budgeting can help you with that as well. If you want to stop spending so much money on eating out in Starbucks, budgeting can help you with that too. Now, just a quick disclaimer because I have to say it, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just someone who's truly passionate about personal finance and wants to teach as many people as possible about it. The method that I use for budgeting is not the only one available. There are apps that can do this for you. There are online sites that can do this for you. I choose to do it a little bit more of a manual way, but there are plenty of ways to do it, and the concepts that I will show you today apply to all of them. At the end of the day, this method of budgeting helped me save over 50% of my income in 2020. And what I'm hoping it does for you is get you thinking about finances in the correct way so that you can accomplish your goals. The first step to budgeting is just purely tracking everything that's coming into your accounts and leaving your accounts. So that means tracking your income and your expenses. This step is almost like running a diagnostics test on your own habits before you actually get started fixing them. I know that the majority of you out there already have a Gmail, so this should be super accessible for you. So let's jump right into it. So first step is just to go ahead and log into your Google Drive. So once you're in your Google Drive, all you're going to do is create a new Google Sheet from a template. And Google has a bunch of great templates for you to use, and I love the annual budget one for tracking my finances. I know it's called an annual budget, but really it's more just for tracking your income and your expenses. It doesn't really help you set up goals. But either way, this is the first step to take, so this is a perfect spreadsheet for us. And as you can see here, this spreadsheet comes with a couple different tabs, and I would just leave those alone for now. I will get to some edits that I would recommend you make in a second. So starting with the setup tab, you can see that the most important part of this is just the starting balance. So I would go ahead and input that number that is your starting total of everything in your checkings, your savings account, all of that fun stuff. If you want to distinguish what's in your savings versus your checking starting off, you can do that by just adding a couple rows. Just make sure that the starting balance is the sum of those rows that you just added instead of inputting your own number here. Now I'm going to skip forward to this income tab and we'll come back to the expenses. But basically the way they set it up is that your income is just broken down between wages and other. So those are your main categories. There are subcategories within each, and you can actually go in and relabel these with whatever you want it to be. For example, I would probably just keep salary in here, maybe bonus, and then other. And I would just delete the other categories. So you can go ahead and relabel the categories or the subcategories however you want. You just don't want to change up the way the spreadsheet is laid out too much, because you can see there's actually some formulas already input in here that will total a bunch of your things for you. Now when it comes to your actual income and wages coming in, I would recommend separating out your salary from your taxes, your healthcare costs, your 401k contributions, anything else that would show up on your paycheck that deducts away from your salary or your bonus. The reason I recommend separating these things from things like your taxes, your healthcare costs, is that it will actually help you understand how much total income you're making and how much you're spending towards some of those things. Getting a better understanding of how much you're contributing to your 401k or your taxes or Medicare, Social Security, things like that will actually help you in the long run. So jumping to the expenses tab, so you can see here that they have set up a couple categories and subcategories for you, just like with the income tab. And you can go ahead and change that to whatever you would like. The way I kind of organize my categories is by the most important or the necessities towards the top, and then the fun stuff or the things that I don't necessarily need to spend on every month towards the bottom. Deciding on the categories that you want to use is a task in itself, because the categories you choose will really help you make sense of what you're spending and then help you look at trends and make changes on these habits. So it's really up to you what categories you decide to do. So for example, I have a category called food, and I have subcategories within that called groceries, eating out, and drinks. Though it's not like I've been going out to bars or anything to spend money on drinks, so that subcategory has been $0 across the board. You can definitely look through the sheet's examples of categories to see if any of them make sense to you, but I personally just made all new categories and subcategories, and I'll show you a couple examples of mine in a second. Now remember, I did recommend separating out your taxes, your health insurance, your 401k costs from your paycheck. So in this expense tab, you will definitely want to have a category for health expenses, for taxes, and for your savings contributions. Now let's jump to that summary tab to really understand what it's doing for you. You can see there's a note here that says please don't edit the sheet, because there are a bunch of formulas in here and a bunch of graphs that it will automate for you. So for right now, I would recommend just not touching any of those things. So this summary tab will start to auto-populate with all of the numbers that you've put in the other 3 tabs. You're going to see this summary table, and it's going to be really important because it's going to take all your numbers from your income tabs, it's going to take all your expenses, and it's going to figure out what your net savings are between those 2 categories. It's going to add in that beginning balance, whatever number you put in the setup tab, and it's going to give you a final number of how much money you have. You can look through some of the other tables and graphs that this sheet provides, but it's pretty handy. It shows you a graph of how much you're spending in each expense category, and it just gives you the totals in a very digestible view. The thing that I would recommend editing on this overall sheet is actually adding a bunch of tabs. What I would do with these tabs is actually label them for each category that you have within the income and expenses tabs. For example, under income, we had that wages category. So on one of these tabs, I'm actually going to rename this as wages details. And remember, on your expenses tab, there was a food category that we made, so I would just add a tab for food details, and I'd move it over here. The reason I recommend adding in these additional detail tabs is because even on the expenses and the income tabs, they are overall summaries of how much money you have put into the salary tab, or how much money you've spent in groceries in total in January. It doesn't really give you the detail line by line item. So what I would recommend is going into your food details, importing all of your information from your bank accounts, whether that is a checking account, a credit card statement, just importing all of those items in line by line so you can keep track of everything under food in one section. It'll make a little bit more sense when you get to my real life example and show you some numbers and how this sheet works for me. But basically, let's say you're looking at your expenses tab, and for January, your groceries are actually really, really expensive. You can just quickly flip to your food details tab and see what you bought within January. Alright, so I have a real life example set up for you here, just to show you exactly how I use this sheet to track my expenses. Keep in mind that all the numbers I show you here are pretty fake and arbitrary. This is just to show you how the sheet works in reality and how it can help you. So let's pretend to start off the year in my Chase checking account I had $10,000, and in my savings I had $5,000. You can see I put a formula in the starting balance just to sum up these 2 lines because I did choose to add in lines for my separate accounts. You don't have to do that, you can just put your total number here. So before I show you the expenses and income and summary tabs, I'm going to skip over to my income details tab. You can see I've made quite a few tab additions here, and these are all the different categories of expenses and income. You can see I have one for taxes, for savings, for all of my different expense categories, and my income details. So let's jump to that. The way I've actually set up all of these additional tabs is very similar. I have made columns for description, subcategory, amount, date, and comments. So all I've done with my income details is just taken a look at my fake Chase checking account and seen that the IRS sent me $600 on January 4th. And the subcategory that I actually chose to use was gift here. I also got paid twice during the month, one on January 15th and one on the 29th, and I got paid $2,000 each time in my fake checking account. And you can see I have a couple other line items here. I got a fake $500 gift, and I also include my savings interest in my income details because it is an additional amount that's coming into your account. That may not make sense to you, but I just feel like interest is like this additional amount I'm getting paid, so I just put it in my income details. Going back to how I recommended separating out your paycheck between the salary and taxes and everything else you pay within your paycheck, you can see this in action in my example here. So on January 15th, I got paid $2,000 for only my salary. But if you go over here to my health details, on the 15th, I actually paid for health insurance, dental insurance, and I also got a wellness credit all within that same paycheck. Something else that came out of this $2,000 salary on the 15th when I got paid was my savings contributions. So you can see on my savings details tab, on January 15th, I made a contribution of $300 towards my Roth 401k in this case. Again, fake numbers, but you get the gist of how I separated out that savings amount from my paycheck. And now on to all the taxes that I paid on my $2,000 salary on January 15th. If you look at my taxes tab, you can see I also documented all of the taxes I paid on the 15th. So that is Social Security, Medicare, the federal withholding tax, state withholding, and because I work in Detroit, city withholding. Now you might be wondering how I set up all of these drop-down subcategories. So I just selected this entire column. I went to data validation, and you can see I did from a list of items, and I just put in all of my subcategories as things that I could choose from my drop-down menu. That just makes it easier for me so that every single time I add in a line item, say for February, I'm ready to put in my Social Security tax. I don't have to fully type out Social Security again, I just go to my drop down and make it Social Security. This kind of categorization within the details tabs also helps me with my expense and income overall tabs, which I'll show you right now. Looking at my expenses tab, you can see I've made quite a few changes to all of the categories and the subcategories. I've also deleted any extra rows just to make it look a little prettier. So in this example here, I am pretending that I have already gone ahead and input some numbers here, which are totals from all these details tabs, but I'm going to show you exactly how I use a formula to do that for me. Let's work on the category housing and the subcategory rent for the month of January. Now I could just see that I only have one line item for rent. I spent $900 in the month of January, and I could go back to my expenses tab and I could just input $900 for rent. Or if you want to be cool and fancy, you could actually use this equation, and I'll show you right here. Sum if, and what it does is it actually totals different categories for you. So on this one, I'm looking at utilities. So I'm going to go to the utilities, and I'm going to select the different range that I'm trying to calculate from. I'm going to say only look up any category that is tied to utilities and sum up those amounts. And it gives me that total here as well. You don't have to be this fancy. I just found that it helps me out when I have multiple line items for the same subcategory. You can see that in play with my health category. So under my health details, you can see that I have multiple things under health insurance, I have multiple things under dental, and multiple things under less. So if I go to my health insurance subcategory, I'm just going to sum up everything in January and it'll do the summing for me. There you go. And because I'm using the same cells to figure out how much I spent on all of these other categories, I'm just going to take that equation and input it within all the other subcategories and just change what it's looking for. That was just another quick tip on how I keep everything organized. You may have also seen that there are some colored cells here. What I find that this does for me is that as soon as I start inputting all of my February dates and line items, after I'm done with February and after I'm done inputting everything into my expenses and my income tabs, I go ahead and highlight all of my February line items and just highlight it a different color. That way, if I go back to any of my tabs, I can just quickly identify that this group was in January and this group was in February. So you might want to think about doing something similar. Another quick tip to keep all of this information organized. So in your income tab, everything that's coming into your account, I would keep positive. And for all of your expense categories, for right now, I would also keep as positive numbers, because in your summary tab, you can actually see that all your expenses are supposed to be a positive number, because all they do here to get your net savings is take this positive number and subtract this positive number to get your savings. I know that might sound like a duh moment for a lot of people, but for all of my accounting folks, where it is in your blood to try and put this expense as a negative number, just hold off on doing that, because the summary tab is expecting a positive for your expenses. And now that we've input a couple things for our expenses and our income, we can go back into our summary tab, and remember, I haven't filled anything out in here. This automatically takes numbers from my other two tabs. You can see that the income is filled in, the expenses for January is filled in, and this is the net savings. So the income minus the expenses gives you this number, and then you add it to the original starting setup number of $15,000, and you get $16,446 as your ending balance for January. If we scroll down a little bit further, you can see that the totals for every subcategory show up here as well. And you get to start filling out your fancy graphs that just show you how much you've spent. I know it's super geeky, but I think it's pretty cool. And that is it, my friends. That is how you track your income and your expenses, stay organized, and remember, if it's easier for you to just go into your bank accounts and download all your statements to get all of these line items super organized like I have them, go ahead and do that. You don't have to manually enter everything in like I have. I would recommend going in and filling out all of these line items at least once or twice a month just to keep up with it, and then filling out the expenses and the income tabs with your totals at least once a month. It's the beginning of March, so my assignment to you is to go back and look at everything that you've spent within the categories that you've designated for January and February. So go back, look at your bank statements for the past 2 months, so that at the end of March, you will have 3 total months of data. That will help us budget for the rest of the year, which will be in my part 2 video, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I really hope that I helped you in your personal finance journey. That is my #1 goal with these types of videos. Don't forget to click that like button if I taught you something new today or gave you a new idea, and don't forget to subscribe to see part 2 to this video coming soon. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I will catch you guys on my next video.